What is up, boys and girls? Londrick here, and now I'm back with another edition of Lundrick's Fave 5s, and this one is going to be Fave 5 WWE DVD releases. So, kind of a big thing lately. Looking at the 2020 schedule, it now seems that the special WWE DVDs are now not happening no more. That WWE, they're just going to release the pay-per-views now, and to be fair, I actually do get when I do the Q&A either next week or the week after. I do actually have a question on this, but so I'll elaborate more when I answer the question later on, whether I think this is a good thing or a bad thing. But the facts are, with the way the world's changed over the last few years, online streaming's become a massive thing. That's the way to go. Physical media is definitely dying out, and obviously we do it on the network now, pretty much, and doing stuff like WWE 24 and stuff like that, and little documentaries like that. The DVD market's definitely dried up now, but for a long time, the DVDs that WWE brought out were some of the most exciting things you could have as a wrestling fan. I know me personally, I collected most of these special DVDs, so from like 2004 until about 2000, I think about 2014, 2015 I stopped collecting. So all the great DVDs out there over those years, I do have most of them. But obviously now with the network and all that, I don't really watch them anymore. They're just kind of sat in my house on a shelf somewhere. Might occasionally pull them out sometimes if I can't be asked to fire the network up. But most of the documentaries are on there now, and obviously with all the archive footage being on the WWE network, pretty much nearly all the matches are on the network as well. And that's the thing, when the network started in 2014, not all this footage was on there, so all this archive footage is being added over time. And this is one Prince of Strong Style has been asking me about this for ages. He asked if I would do a list, and I thought, this probably work better as a Fear 5. So finally, he badgered me enough to the point I'm doing it. But it's going to be a good one, this one. This is going to be a different one. So when I select these, it's going to be for a few different reasons. Not just match quality, but, and little spoiler, everyone in this one has a documentary. So it's got to be, for me, the quality of the documentary, the match quality, like the rare matches on here, and what other footage is on here. So a little bit of combination of everything. But let's rattle off a few honourable mentions before we get the actual list. The Chris Jericho DVD from 2009. You Think You Know Me, the Edge story, that one came out in about 2011. By Kingdom Come, the Triple H story in 2000 and I think that came out in about 2013. The Owen Heart of Gold that came out in 2000 and it's either 14 or 15, I can't remember, it was one of those ones. But I do know that was one of the very last WWE DVDs I ever bought. The Jake the Snake Roberts DVD of 2005. The Road Warriors DVD also in 2005. So enough about honourable mentions, let's get to the actual list. Coming at number 5, the bottom line on the greatest superstar in WWE history, Stone Cold Steve Austin. This DVD, as far as the documentary, is absolutely outstanding. Of course, the subject, Stone Cold Steve Austin, arguably the biggest superstar of all time. It's a funny one, really, because ever since Stone Cold became popular back in the day, there's been releases on Steve Austin for years, going all the way back to like 98, 99, it was VHS's, little documentaries here and there. We got this DVD game in the early 2000s, I think there was one of them there, and they were all good, but they weren't great. And then in 2008, WWE had another DVD on Stone Cold, I think it was 2008, the Stone Cold Legacy, but that was straight up a match compilation with Steve Austin talking about the matches a little bit, which was cool. But the in-depth documentary was definitely lacking on there. And this one that came out in 2011, because I think Steve Austin pushed for this. He wanted a hands-on, in-depth look on his career, because by this time he'd been retired for a few years now, and was looking back on his career and thought, damn, he had a really great career. So the documentary for me makes this an absolute must-have. Because I remember initially I didn't get it because the most, because the match listing on here really, which I'll get into in a sec, was pretty much a lot of repeat matches on various DVDs, which I didn't get it. Now, a lot of UK fans, you'll probably understand what I'm talking about here, or European fans. The old distributors of WWE videos and DVDs were Silvervision, and they had a website at the time, silvervision.co.uk, and that was where you got most of your DVDs from. But from time to time, the website would do special deals, special discount deals and stuff like that. And I believe there was always a certain day of the week where there was an absolutely special deal. I believe it was either a Wednesday or a Thursday, something like that. But there was always one day of the week where they would have these insane deals. And in one of these weeks, it was a Stone Cold Steve Austin DVD, which I think was for like £8 or something like that, like something mental cheap. So I had to get it because I thought, wow, what a bargain this is. For £8 I might as well watch it and then just watch the DVD and see how I feel. Now, with this big Stone Cold Steve Austin, this was a 4-disc set. Traditionally, most guys only ever had three discs, but Stone Cold Special, Stone Cold gets 4. And for me, the documentary was absolute. As far as a superstar profile, this might actually be the best documentary WWE's ever put out. It's on the network now if you want to see it. But God, this one runs for over 2 hours and it goes through everything in Austin's career, his early life, a nice little look into him getting started in the wrestling business and all that. Great selection of interview people. I mean, Dutch Mantel, Paul Heyman, Mick Foley, Vince, Triple H, all these guys. Brett was on here. So a great look into Austin's time in the USWA, into WCW and all that. So some great footage there. Then they talk about how Austin got fired from WCW, and you can see Austin even then was still quite bitter about it. But he does concede, which is quite, now that you can totally see why Bischoff fired him. Obviously saying, not then I couldn't. I was pissed off at the time, but I can kind of see how he was feeling then. Then obviously showed Austin going to ECW, doing those epic promos. I think in the documentary they even see an outtake where after Austin cuts a promo, Paul Heyman from ECW guys were like, damn, that was fucking awesome, directing it, telling how great it was. And then obviously his WWE run, which takes up the bulk of the DVD, and why wouldn't it, because Stone Cold Steve Austin, mega run. I mean, I could talk about all day what a huge star Steve Austin was, but I don't think I really need to. I think most educated wrestling fans know what Stone Cold Steve Austin went through, so talking about the ringmaster and all that and how he hated the gimmick. And it comes up with a hilarious story of when he was wanting to get away from the ringmaster and become Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was transitioning into this new character, this cold-blooded character, and he was coming up with a few names for the character. And some of the creative people came up with the following names: Ice Dagger, Chili McFreeze, Fang McFrost. These were honest to God 3 names pitched to him. Then of course he tells the story about how he had an English wife at the time. Because yes, English people, we drink tea, Americans. There's your little stare. Yes, us British people like to drink tea, alright. So Stone Cold was having his wife made him a cup of tea. He's mulling over the name. And then his wife goes, Now hurry up and drink your tea before it comes Stone Cold. And that's how he came up with Stone Cold Steve Austin. So a comment by his wife that he's hurry up or his tail gets stone cold. There goes Stone Cold Steve Austin, the rest is history. Then we go through his 1996 King of the Ring thing. Austin 316, kind of been a big deal. And then I love seeing the stuff of Steve Austin and Bret Hart. Just love reliving that feud and hear them talking about through the Survivor Series, the WrestleMania 13 match, the epic double turn and all that sort of stuff. And I think CM Punk made a great point when he's taught of that, where he said something like, I don't think people necessarily hated Bret Hart, it's just they loved Steve Austin that much more. And I would agree with that. Then obviously we go through 97, obviously epic run on the top, feuding with Vince and all that stuff. I mean, all the stuff you've seen loads of times before, but it's always nice to go back and relive it, because those were magical times, especially that Austin-Vince feud. The whole thing of Austin being on top and all that. So they pretty much don't leave anything out. They go through the entire thing of Austin getting injured in 1999, taking the year off. And even Austin admitted on there that he Even when he got injured in 1999, he wasn't sure if he was coming back, and he remembers him and Vince having a conversation about a creative, and Austin to Vince was like, I don't even know if I am coming back, Vince, and Vince would be like, shit. So obviously then Austin comes back, 2000, talk about the 2001 heel turn. Austin admits it was a mistake, but then we get to see some of the funny comedy stuff with Austin and Kurt Angle. That was great. And then they go really in depth on Austin's unhappiness into 2002 and the whole thing about his departure and all that, which, yeah, let's be honest, we don't need to go into the big details about that, but Austin admits he was wrong and all that, and then we see Austin coming back, having to retire against The Rock, coming back as a GM, and some of that fun stuff. And then obviously we go through little various things in the Austin's post-retirement career, and then we get this awesome video at the end with this country song, Somewhere Down in Texas by George Strait. Not a big country music fan, but I do like that song, and it really fits Steve Austin so well. That video at the end was absolutely awesome. And then the matches are pretty much the ones you've seen over and over again. So 2 of The Rock's WrestleMania matches, Austin Brett at WrestleMania, Austin and Mike is at WrestleMania 14, and I think Austin versus Dude Love from Over the Edges on there as well. But there's one gem out there that really makes it worth it. The match is not even on the WWE Network yet, although I imagine at some point it will be. And that was WCW Saturday Night in July 1994. Kind of a dream tag team match when you think about it. Ric Flair and Stunning Steve Austin versus Sting and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Wow, that match is absolutely awesome actually. Probably one of Austin's best ever WCW matches. I mean, if you haven't seen that match, see if you can find it online. I'm sure it'll be out there on Daily Motion or YouTube or somewhere. Someone will be able to find it somewhere. But is an awesome match. Then I think the last disc is entirely on promos and stuff. So some of Austin's very best promos are on there in full, like his ECW promos, the Pillman's Got a Gun thing with Brian Pillman, most of his greatest segments with Vince and all that sort of shit. So big stuff on there. And so as far as content, you can't really go wrong with this DVD. It's an absolutely outstanding piece of work, and is definitely worthy of being in my list. Coming in at number 4, being released in 2012, is CM Punk Best in the World. CM Punk's the guy that's on a lot of people's minds right now, and he's on this list as well. So for me, I was so excited when this DVD came out, because obviously at the time, CM Punk was my favourite wrestler. Big fan of the guy, still a big fan of the guy, and who knows what will happen. I did discuss CM Punk's return to WWE backstage last week, but this is going to be an interesting one, because let's be honest, Punk and WWE very rarely saw eye to eye. I mean, obviously, they disagreed a lot. So how could they do a DVD where would Punk have to toe the line and try to bullshit his way through it and say he was always happy and all that? And were WWE going to allow CM Punk to be honest and air a lot of opinions that were negative towards WWE? And the answer was, seemed like they pretty much give Punk free rein to do what he wanted. So again, the documentary, it's on the network still, but it was an absolutely outstanding documentary. You kind of get to know CM Punk a lot, or you get to see a bit more of Phil Brooks in this one, because I've always perceived CM Punk as a bit of an antisocial guy. I think he's the sort of person who would be really hard to get to know. He's not very open. I mean, when CM Punk was in his prime, we didn't really know a lot about him. Not about CM Punk the wrestler, but Phil Brooks the guy. So you kind of get a look into his life, and he had a really interesting upbringing. I mean, just obviously he had a lot of issues with his family and all that, to the point he actually left home when he was a teenager and moved in with his best friend and her family. So he kind of had an adopted family. He had a lot of issues with his mother. His dad had a lot of problems with alcohol. There was an older brother that he didn't get along with. CM Punk's mind, he feel like his parents favoured his brother and all that. It's kind of a sad story, really, when you look at it and think, wow, this guy had it really tough growing up. So when you look at things like that, you can kind of tell why CM Punk is the way he is, because of his tough upbringing. And then what I loved, we'd go on about CM Punk falling in love with wrestling and all that, being different, being a bit of outcast. And you even get to see them talk about CM Punk being a backyard wrestler, Which, to be fair, that was kind of cool. Some really cool footage from the old. God, this must have been like mid 1990s. CM Punk being a backyard wrestler and all that sort of stuff. Um, so they kind of really had their own little thing they were doing. Like they were actually having people going to watch these kids that really didn't know what they were doing, wrestling in the backyard. That's kind of thing, backyard wrestling. It's all amateur stuff. Guys aren't really trained. Guys don't really know what they're doing, but they have great ideas in their mind. I mean, yeah, I don't know what to think about backyard wrestling. I mean, to be fair, when we were all younger, we all used to wrestle around and fuck around with our buddies, didn't we? Come on, every wrestling fan's done that, right? And then obviously he talks about he wanted to get trained to become a wrestler, trained under Ace Steel in Chicago, so we get to hear stories about that. We get to hear stories from people like CM Punk's ex-girlfriend and people like that. Names like Cole Cabana crop up in this documentary, Joey Mercury. And what I thought was really interesting, because at the time WWE had never done this before. They have done this a handful of times since on like WWE 24 documentaries and all that. Seems they struck a deal with some of these indie promoters, so IWA Mid-South, and especially Ring of Honor. So we actually got to see a lot of CM Punk's indie footage on this documentary. No full matches, which was kind of a shame, but I suppose I kind of get it. Probably would have cost WWE a little bit extra money to air these matches on full, and these companies were still around, especially Ring of Honor, who were doing DVDs at the same time. So I guess this is because this one going document is one of my things. Were they gonna just gloss over Punk's indie career and just kind of just do it in like 2 or 3 minutes and then goes right with WWE run? No, they spent a good amount of time in the documentary talking about his indie work, which I loved that. Especially since it was kind of surreal seeing a lot of Ring of Honor footage on a WWE DVD production at the time. I mean, they showed stuff of him and Raven. They showed clips of his matches with Samoa Joe. Not too in depth, but they showed a bit of it. And they showed like when he won the Ring of Honor title from Austin Aries and then cut that epic promo in the Summer of Punk. And then they even showed footage of CM Punk going back to the Ring of Honor school, visiting the Ring of Honor school in Philadelphia, which is cool. So stuff like that, like I say, at the time, was pretty much unheard of. To have them showing footage that WWE don't own on the DVD. Like I say, since more indie standouts have been WWE superstars, we have seen stuff on WWE documents. Hell, even last couple of years, we've even seen TNA footage surface on WWE documentaries, which is weird. But at the time, it was unheard of. Then this slides nicely right into CM Punk's WWE run, which is refreshingly honest, which I've got to give WWE a lot of credit for allowing the story to be told right. They weren't like bullshitting. They pretty much said that CM Punk wasn't welcome with WWE in open arms. He was chucking developmental. Punk said how frustrated he was. But at the time, he was going to use the OVW to learn, and pretty much admits the only reason he had a WWE futures because Paul Heyman happened to be working with OVW at the time, and he learned so much from Heyman. And Heyman was pretty much the only one in the WWE system singing his praises and all that. And we do get to see some nice footage from OVW. They particularly highlight the Brent Albright feud. And there's even a match between the two in full later on in the thing. Then we talk about Punk going through ECW. And they pretty much how he wasn't a WWE guy and they didn't really like him and all that, and he had to really struggle. And CM Punk pretty much talks about how he always thought he was probably going to get cut. I mean, there was a couple of occasions where it seemed like he was going to get fired. I mean, they even have a claim that even OVW, Paul Heyman was asked to fire CM Punk, and Heyman said he didn't want to do it. Said, you fire CM Punk. So they pretty much say a few times CM Punk was under consideration for getting cut, but he somehow survived and eventually did well for himself on ECW and all that. Then eventually won the Money in the Bank and then being World Heavyweight Champion. And even how he was kind of the World Heavyweight Champion, but not really. He was never really the guy who was World Heavyweight Champion. So it just seems like for years CM Punk was getting these things, but the frustration was always there. There was always reluctance on WWE's part to go all the way with him, and that's kind of thing in the document. And then we go into his 2009 run as a leader of the Straight Edge Society, and all that sort of stuff. Great stuff. You see footage of CM Punk and Jeff Hardy and that sort of thing. Then in 2010, where there's more frustration and all that. And then it goes really in depth into contract negotiations in 2011. I would think like CM Punk was out the door and all that kind of stuff. Then eventually re-signed, and the documentary ends in 2011 where he wins back when he has a match with John Cena in Chicago, and it seems like a happy ending. But of course, obviously things really unravelled later on, of course, in 2014. But yeah, there's some good stuff in here. Great documentary, great footage, great interviews. You like to see, really get to kind of see Phil Brooks more than you get to see CM Punk in this one, and the match list again is great. Obviously, most of these big matches are on here, like the CM Punk John Cena match, Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 28, that sort of thing. There's an OVW match there, Punk and Brent Albright, when he wins the ECW title, that's on there. One thing I feel really interesting, because there's two Pacific Raw matches which I noticed this on. When him and Kofi beat DiBiase and Rhodes in 2008, and when he won the Intercontinental title from Regal in 2009, the matches in there is full with the commercial breaks. What happened during the commercial breaks is still on there for the DVD, because typically WWE don't do that. I mean, they usually cut out everything that's cut out on the television broadcast. So it kind of thought that was kind of interesting. And obviously there's like a lot extra stories on the DVD and that sort of thing. Which is great. So really cool stories on there. So if you haven't got this DVD, if you want to buy it, I would say definitely check it out. It's a tremendous one. Coming in number 3, the Ultimate Ric Flair Collection, which was released in 2003. For me, this is the one that changed the game, in my opinion. This is the one that really kicked off the market for classic content on DVDs that became a staple of the company for about a good 10 years after that. So let's take a little time travel back to 2003, guys, or even before that. So into the 90s and into the early 2000s as well, archive footage was really hard to come by, because we had these things called VHS. Now a lot of you kids must be wondering, what the fuck's a VHS, right? Basically it was a video cassette where you'd have your footage on, but it was this big bulky thing that you'd put on this thing called a VCR. VCR is obviously a thing of the past now, and the thing about them, you had to like physically rewind them to where you wanted to watch it from. But of course, inevitably at the time, the quality of the videos was way down and all that, because it wasn't really this great thing. And then DVD comes into play. I think about the late 90s, early 2000s, but they were not everybody had a DVD player back in those days. We actually didn't. Yeah, I remember back in like, I don't think I really got on the DVD thing until I got a PS2, and I used to play stuff on the PS2 because I didn't have a DVD player. So for me, I was still doing the VHS thing until around like 2002, 2003, that sort of thing. Because what I used to do was I used to record the WWE pay-per-views onto VHS, so I didn't even used to buy them either. Like, I should record them from me TV. So over the years, I had most WWE pay-per-views on DVD from about 92 till about 2004, 2005 maybe. So, and the thing is, yeah, like I say, the quality would wear down. Then these DVD things came along, which was much better quality. You could just skip straight to whatever you wanted to watch. You didn't have to ask on for all this rewinding and all that bullshit. The picture quality was so much better. Just everything about it was so much better. And back then, of course, so to find archive footage, it was really hard, because you could download stuff on certain websites and all that, but problem was, not everyone had broadband back then. I think most people were still having dial-up internet, which you kids will never know the struggle of having slow 56k modem with dial-up internet, where you had to physically plug it into your phone line, and if someone in your family had to use a telephone, it would cut the internet off and all that. And if someone tried to ring the house, you couldn't get through because the internet was a gay. Yeah, And when I was growing up, we had one computer in the house for everyone. That's a crazy thing that we used to struggle with back then. One home computer for the entire house, and that's all how we used the internet. There was no internet and all these fancy devices. I mean, every phone's got internet access on it now. Every tablet. God, I'm just sounding like an old bastard here, aren't I? Really complaining about goddamn kids and your fancy devices. But it was a struggle. So with having slow internet, it wasn't really worth downloading it because, god damn it, if you want to like download a match or something, it would take forever. I mean, I remember back in the day when you had like your Kazaa and stuff like that, and it would take like 2 hours to download one song sometimes because the internet was so slow and all the traffic and all that. And then, if you do download something and it takes you so long, you have to kind of hope it's not a virus, because I remember getting so many computer viruses due to downloading stuff from all this dodgy software and all that shit. So, yeah, it was really hard. And then, obviously, if you were grown up and all that, and you had money and all that, you would take trade, but even then you were chancing it. You were basically giving someone money and then trusting them to send you this tape whenever, like a couple of weeks later. So you have to really trust like people not to be complete cunts and then take your money and just don't give you your tape. So now 2003, the DVD market started blowing up. It'd been a couple of years that WWE had the WCW library, but they didn't really make the most of it. I think they might have had a couple of WCW matches here and there and a couple of DVDs, but not very many. And then at the time 2003, a lot of people that were watching wrestling in the 80s and the 90s were growing up now, and they wanted nostalgia. And then they had a guy in the roster, Ric Flair, who certainly had a hell of a career. So they decided what they were going to do is put some of Ric Flair's best matches out there in a compilation DVD, and see how fans would take to it. And of course, I think it was a monumental success, because I think fans loved the idea of getting a DVD with all these archive footage on and all that sort of shit. Because this was pre-network, of course. Remember, the network wouldn't become a thing until 2014. And like I say before that, not people having VHSs and slow internet and all that sort of thing. So when this DVD came out, fans were so excited for it. Finally, they were stumbling on having all this archive footage and what they could do with it. And I feel like because of the success of this DVD, this kind of opened up the market for, wow, we've got all this footage, why not use it? And at the time, I think I got this DVD on my 80th birthday back in 2004. So, but we'll ignore that. But yeah, I remember getting this and being so excited to see it, because you see, at the time, I'd never actually seen any of these Flair Steamboat classics. The Flair Funk I Quit match, all that stuff. Heard the legend of them, but never seen them in full before. And now, all these years later, I was finally getting to see it. I mean, nowadays, if you're young and you want to see this, easy. You can go on the internet, go on YouTube, and look it up on YouTube or whatever. You've got WWE Network. If you look hard enough, you can pretty much find any footage from wrestling history on the internet somehow. And all in the click of a button as well. So it took me until 2004 to see these matches, and they picked a hell of a lineup for this Flair DVD as well. They definitely did not skimp. Now, I think I made a little mistake earlier. I said every DVD on here has a document. This one does not have a documentary as such. It's Flair talking about the match, and then we get to see the match. But what's awesome about this as well, on the DVD extras, they pretty much show the entire angle of the match in question. So a lot of interviews and all that, a lot of the build up, the actual matches. So this is what's actually on the DVD. Ric Flair Harley Race Starrcade 83. Perfect choice. One of the most iconic matches of all time. One of Ric Flair's defining moments. And what's great about this, you get to see pretty much the entire build up on this show. All the interviews going into it and all that, tremendous. Then Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes from Starrcade 85. Okay, maybe not a great match, but you've got a Ric Flair DVD, you've got to have stuff from Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, right? I mean, as far as promos goes, those were some of the greatest wrestling promos of all time. Absolutely, Flair and Dusty. I mean, this two notable things. This DVD has that epic angle where Ric Flair and the Andersons break Dusty Rhodes' ankle in 1985. Amazing heat there. And it has the amazing Dusty Rhodes Hard Times promo on there, which to me is probably the greatest wrestling promo of all time in my opinion. Then the match was fine, but a big match though. Then we got Ric Flair versus Barry Windham in a very rare match from NWA Worldwide in 1987, a 45-minute draw for the NWA title. That match is an absolute classic match. Amazing match, it really is. Awesome stuff. And then probably the main event, Disc 3, my good God. Not only do we have one Steamboat match from 89, we have two Flair Steamboat matches from 89. Of course, it has the epic Clash match, and then the Wrestle War 89 match, which, yes, that made this DVD for me alone. So finally, 2004, I finally got to see those matches, which, epic. I mean, I can't say, I've said enough good things about the Flair Steamboat matches in the past. You don't really need to hear me say it again, but like I say, we see a lot of the promos and a lot of the build-up for this match as well, which is great. And then that leads us to the Ric Flair Terry Funk match, New York Knockout, I Quit match. Another one of Flair's absolute greatest all-time matches. And of course, we see more great promos for Flair and Funk in the build-up of that one. And then we get the entirety of the 1992 Royal Rumble match. So the entire Royal Rumble match in its entirety, of course, because that Royal Rumble was Flair's crown achievement in the WWF. And obviously we get to see a lot of stuff like Ric Flair's WWF debut in 1991, some of the stuff he did with Roddy Piper and all that. And then, curiously, we get a curious match next, which is Ric Flair versus Sting in the Clash of the Champions title unification match in 1994, which I still think is an odd choice to put on there because at the time, that match was good, very good in fact, but when you think of Sting versus Ric Flair, you'd probably automatically think of the first Clash in 88, or even when Sting won the world title in 1990. I guess the Clash match was probably cut to time constraints, because you do have a lot of long matches on here, so I don't know, maybe they thought it didn't have room for another one, I don't know. But the Royal Rumble match goes over an hour, doesn't it? The Steamboat match goes nearly an hour. The Harley Race one, close to 30 minutes. Barry Windham one, about 45, so maybe that's fine. And then, really interesting one, then we have a special extra in there, and it's kind of a cool one. It's Ric Flair's WWF debut. Notice what I said there, 3 W's, that's right. Ric Flair, before he's a big star, had a handful of matches in the WWF in 1976, and won his Madison Square Garden debut against a guy called Pete Sanchez. Now, this wasn't a very good match or anything, it was pretty much a basic 5-minute, 6-minute match, but it's just kind of cool to see such a rare match on a DVD like this from 1976. And the final match on the DVD, which is for me not a great match but a wonderful moment, is the Ric Flair Triple H match from one of the Carolinas. It was either Greensboro or Greenville, I can't remember which one it was, for the World Heavyweight title in May of 2003. I mean, I loved the story of that match. It was like kind of reversing time. So, for all these years, Ric Flair was the champion fighting the underdog babyface in the territory. And now the roles had pretty much switched. Triple H was the world champion, and Ric Flair was that underdog challenger that had challenged him for all these years and nearly beat him. But then what's cool, at the end of the match, they kind of had a curtain call type moment where because we're in Carolina, which is Ric Flair country, and it kind of became a mini Ric Flair appreciation night. So like about a 10-minute segment, all the Raw superstars came out to pay tribute to Ric Flair and all that. And this is not on the network because this was after the cameras went off. Because I had watched this match back on the network, and network version does not have this segment, but it's like a 10-minute segment of the Raw superstars congratulating Ric Flair, paying tribute to them. Then Ric Flair cuts a nice promo after it and all that. It was really good stuff. So for pure content, you can't really go wrong with this DVD. It is. I think I always feel like this was the one that started it all, to be honest to me. Because after that, I think WWE realised, we can make a hell of a lot of money selling this WCW library. And they did. I mean, they did that tenfold, so many DVDs after that had many WCW matches. And hell, even to this day, they still put WCW stuff on the WWE network. I mean, some of the stuff they put up this year has been insane. And have you seen some of the hidden gems you've got this year? I mean, we're getting pretty much full Crockett Cup shows and a couple of the old Great American Bash shows. Tremendous. So this DVD is awesome. Woo! Coming at number 2, one of the most iconic WWE DVDs you've ever produced. Even a DVD that spawned a rebirth of a brand, and that is the rise and fall of ECW. In 2004. I mean, there was so much hype around this document at the time when it came out. So, like WCW, WWE had the ECW library, but they didn't actually acquire the library at first, because at the time when Paul Heyman filed for bankruptcy and all that, there was a long time between that. And then in 2003, WWE bought the ECW assets from the what do you call it? The person who sorts out stuff that company is being bankrupt. It's gone in my head now. But basically, WWE bought the rights in 2003, and now not only did WWE have all this classic WWF footage from way back in the day, all the WCW footage now, which I've just talked about, which of course goes back to Jim Crockett Promotions and all that stuff. They had the ECW promotion, all the ECW matches and all that, and of course ECW had a massive cult following. I mean, it was always like kind of counterculture to the WWF and WCW. For me, it's just crazy looking back at ECW. What could ECW be now? It's just kind of funny with all the content we've got now. How would ECW be received in 2019? Would it be as popular as it was in the 1990s? Because obviously it's much more easier to access now, because back in the day they had syndicated television, yeah, but from what I gather, I've heard from the various people that were around at the time, a lot of times it was on at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, of course. This was on way before the days of on-demand TV and all that sort of stuff, so you either had to stay up and watch it, or you had to set your VCRs and then hope your VCR got it right, because even then, like when you record stuff on VCR, it was kind of hard. It didn't always record properly, or it would cut off at the end because you only had so much space in your VHS and all that. And obviously tape trading was a thing back in the day, but of course not everybody did that, because like I say, it was expensive and you had to kind of trust people not to be dickheads and steal your money. But nowadays, obviously, they'd probably have a show on YouTube or something, or even if it wasn't on YouTube, there'd be some kind of streaming service, so I just think it'd be kind of interesting. So here we are, 2004, 3 years after the company folded. I think WWE thought, well, we do have a lot of former ECW talent working in our company. We've got the owner Paul Heyman, we've got Rob Van Dam, we've got the Dudleys, we've got people like Benoit, Jericho, Guerrero, Tommy Dreamer works here. We could make a documentary about this. We've got enough talking heads to make it work. And so they did. And for me, for the documentary alone, this is probably the greatest documentary WWE's ever put out. And I mean that, ever put out. This went over 3 hours long. We had they talked about everything, really. I mean, nothing was really left out. I mean, they talked about the humble beginnings of ECW's, NWA Eastern Championship Wrestling being owned by Todd Gordon and all that. Paul Heyman coming into the company in about 1993, where Todd Gordon and Eddie Gilbert had a big falling out. Eddie Gilbert was out. Then Paul Heyman becomes the booker of ECW. Then we see like early footage of the greats like Sandman, Dreamer, Sabu, Taz, Public Enemy, all that sort of stuff. Then it goes in great detail about the night Shane Douglas threw the NWA title down, and how Eastern Championship Wrestling is rechristened and rebranded Extreme Championship Wrestling. So much great footage, and yeah, it was nice that they actually got the due and all that sort of stuff. We even get interviews with Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff, what their thoughts on the company was and all that sort of stuff. Then we get to see the great footage from the Eddie Guerrero battling Dean Malenko, some of the Cactus Jack promos on anti-hardcore promos in 1995. We get a little bit of a profile on Raven and some of the epic stuff he was doing, in particular the Raven Dreamer rivalry, one of the most epic angles of all time, where Raven brainwashed the Sandman's family to turn against him and join up with Raven. Wow, incredible stuff. And even the controversial stuff, they do not shy away from it. They even show the whole crucifixion of the Sandman in 1996, and how Kurt Angle was there, because Kurt Angle was thinking about working for ECW at the time, and Kurt Angle was so offended that he left the arena and all that. That even soured him on wrestling for a while, crazy as that sounds. But they do actually show the entire crucifixion in full, which was hell of a controversial. Even in 1996, that was massively controversial. Never mind 2019, but then they even caught the mass transit incident also in 1996. Although thankfully they don't actually show any footage of the mass transit incident, which is pretty good. Although if you're morbidly curious about it, you can find the mass transit thing on YouTube somewhere. But be warned, it really is disgusting, and the stories don't do it justice. You kind of have to see it for yourself. They do the Forever Hardcore documentary that came out in 2005, independent one, does go into a lot more detail on this, but then this ties it nicely into ECW having the first pay-per-view, barely legal, and all the struggles that came and had to go through because of the mass transit incident. The pay-per-view got cancelled for a little while, and it was pretty much the support and the begging of the ECW faithful that got it back on pay-per-view. And that ties it in nicely in ECW invading Raw in 1997, which, that just, looking back now, that's just so mental that a company like ECW was on Raw in 1997. Just think about that. That'd be like the modern equivalent of something like Ring of Honor and being on Raw in 2000. But something like Ring of Honor being on Raw now, you just think this just wouldn't happen. But at the time, WWF was struggling. They were number 2, clearly. Vince and Heyman were having a little working relationship, and it seemed like a great fit. I mean, and that Raw is on the network as well. That's a great Raw, but we see some great footage from that. Then obviously a pretty long package on the ECW bare legal pay-per-view. Then the whole 97, 98, and then they go pretty much indefinite. The fall of ECW, the money problems and all that, the business problems they were having, the struggles that they had never being a big company. And it was just kind of an interesting take, because they talk about how a lot of the other guys had other jobs in the company, like Taz designed the t-shirts, people like Tommy Dreamer, Devon Dudley, Little Guido doing the ECW warehouse. So when you bought something from ECW, like when you got mail order from ECW, because mail order back then, guys, remember as well, it was actually, imagine like if WWE does this. WWE's got a massive warehouse somewhere, and they've got like probably hundreds of staff doing this, packing your orders and all that, shipping them out and all that sort of stuff. I mean, WWE's a massive company. They've got people to do this. But ECW, it was people like Dreamer and Devon Dudley that were doing all this for them. Bubba Ray was like booking the buildings and all that. So that was just a really interesting take about how ECW, being a smaller company, the guys had to do a lot more to survive. And then it goes right into the fall. And to be fair, they don't shy from the fact that Paul Heyman had a lot of fault in this. I mean, a lot of people blame Paul Heyman for the fall of ECW, so they don't shy away from that. Obviously, guys talk about how they weren't getting paid for months and months and all that sort of bounce checks and all that shit. I mean, looking back, it's crazy like how they got away with that. And I've always been amazed that nobody in the ECW roster beat the shit out of Paul Heyman, because there was some crazy characters in ECW, and Paul Heyman was really playing a rough game by not paying these guys and stuff like that. So I'm honestly God surprised that nobody actually beat the shit out of Paul Heyman during this time. Feel like he's very lucky. Then we see the company died and all that, because it was inevitable. I mean, if you've seen the documentary, I think you'll love it. I think you really will love it. It's a 3-hour-long documentary though, so I think it's like the longest documentary WWE's ever done. But I feel like it was worth the 3 hours. I mean, just to give you compare, when they did the Rise and Fall of WCW in 2009, it was a shorter documentary, but they left so much important shit out. There was so much shit that they left out in that one. I mean, that was a very, very flawed documentary. Could have been an amazing documentary, but it wasn't. It was just alright. But this one, pretty much everything was left in. You had a few promos in there. But there was 7 matches on this, so not a lot of big matches, but some great ones. I mean, we had Raven and Stevie Richards versus the Pitbulls and a 2 out of 3 double dog collar match in Gangster's Paradise in 1995. We had an amazing match on Hardcore TV with Rey Mysterio Jr. versus Psychosis. That match was amazing. CyberSlam Sabu versus Too Cold Scorpio, 30-minute draw. That for me is probably the best Sabu match I've ever seen. So I would definitely recommend checking that one out. A match that isn't really that good, but kind of entertaining. The Sandman versus Mikey Whipwreck from November to Remember 95. What else is on there? RVD versus Jerry Lynn from... There was a Hardcore Heaven match, not the Living Dangerously one, which is slightly disappointing. Raven versus Dream, the last match in 1997, where Dreamer finally beats Raven to go to... And Raven goes to WCW. And I'm pretty sure the entire post-match angle with Jerry Lawler, Sabu and Taz is on there as well. I haven't watched it for a long time, so I can't remember. And then I think the last other matches there, Taz and Bam Bam Bigelow. The famous match where they go through the ring at Living Dangerously in 1998. So a nice match selection. But this one's all about the documentary, it really is. And if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. Coming in, number 1. Biased view, yes, but fuck it, it's my list. I don't really care what people think if people get upset. But number 1, released in 2005. Bret Hart, the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. You won't believe how excited I was when this DVD came out, because it was Bret finally doing something with the WWE after all these years and all the bitterness and all that sort of stuff. So this is a DVD that was kind of in the works for a long time. I mean, even before Bret left the company, Bret and Vince were talking about something about well, it would have been VHS back then, but a video compilation of Bret Hart's best matches in the WWF. And of course, when Bret left the company under the circumstances he did, that was out the window. That was never going to happen now. And then Bret, because one of Bret's big things was he always wanted his career to be remembered positively. He was always protective of his legacy and all that. Maybe too much, maybe not. Yeah, probably too much. But Bret's big thing was never being forgotten. Always wanted his legacy preserved. And I think the biggest thing for Bret is he didn't want Montreal to define his career. And that's fair. It was one night in an epic career that he had. And I think looking back now, I think Bret was incredibly paranoid, but Bret was thinking with what happened, and especially what happened with Owen and all that Bret's career would be erased. All these great moments and great matches that Bret had acquired in his career would be forgotten about and never seen again, which, looking back, that's ridiculous of Bret to think that. I mean, that's just Bret being incredibly paranoid, but that's definitely how he felt at the time. Then, of course, as time goes on, Bret gets a better relationship with Vince. I mean, it was pretty much after this Bret had the stroke, and then Vince McMahon was one of the first people to call Bret to give him a big pep talk, and that definitely opened up a lot of doors. And then you'd hear rumours about them talking about doing something like this again. I mean, from what I understand, 2003, 2004, they were definitely talking about it. Definitely talking about, but I think one of the big sticking points was the Montreal screw job. How are they going to tackle that? Because to this day, it's still the same. Bret has his version of what went down. And WWE and Vince have their own version went down. Both sides have completely different opinions and completely different perspectives of what went down. So how are they going to do a joint project and cover this one in a manner that can be acceptable to both? It was going to be very tricky, wasn't it? And that's kind of why it seemed it didn't happen. They couldn't really get over that hurdle. And then 2005 comes around. Remember 2005? There was a very famous DVD documentary in 2005, wasn't he? And that was called The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. That, though, if you remember that was just... I hated that documentary, to be honest. I mean, it just seemed like it was all out of malice and spite and just bitterness from WWE. Pretty much completely buried a guy. Did Warrior have a lot of faults? Absolutely. Of course he did. I mean, there's no way to say Warrior was perfect. But the Ultimate Warrior was a star. And the Ultimate Warrior made a lot of money for the company. And I think for WWE just to completely shit on him like that was just wrong. And yeah... I had a big problem with that one. But so after that, it seemed like WWE thought, well, we'll just do a documentary on Bret on our own, and it was going to be called Screwed, the Bret Hart Story. And it's quite a famous story now because this DVD was going to be entirely based around Montreal and that day, and obviously WWE was going to be doing it, so it was going to be entirely WWE spinning that. And I'm not going to get into details now about what I think about Montreal. I mean, it's a long gone issue, but there was even interviews filmed for it as well, which I always wonder, do WWE still have these? They must have them somewhere in the archive somewhere. I would even like, just out of curiosity, I would like to see them put on a hidden gem section of the network. But for various wrestlers, did a few interviews about, and it was pretty much a hatchet job in the same, probably not quite as bad as the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior, but it was a pretty much DVD portraying Bret in a negative light and all that, burying him kind of to an extent. So when Bret got wind of this, he knew at this time, because he'd been retired for a while at this point. This was 2005, and especially he hadn't been in the WWF for a long time. So he hadn't been in the WWF for like 8 years at that point, and at the time, a lot of the people who were watching wrestling in Bret's day were gone. There was a lot of younger fans, a lot of fans that had quite frankly never seen Bret Hart wrestle before. So Bret decided to intervene. He decided to make a deal with Vince. He convinced Vince to scrap the Screw project. And let's just do this in a nice way. Just let me tell me story, let me tell me legacy and all that. And so the compromise was made. Bret and WWE were working together to do Bret Hart, the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be, which is basically just a straight up career retrospective and all that sort of stuff. And when he announced this on the website, I could not believe it. There was even a picture of Bret and Vince in the WWE studio shaking hands. I mean, my God, this was a massive thing at the time for me, because I think I was pretty much until this happened, I was convinced Bret was never working for WWE again. It just didn't seem like something was going to happen, and the fact that they were doing this was just so, yeah, that was a big deal for me. And when I found out this DVD was happening, I just could not wait to see it. And when it came out, because it came out in 2005 late, but I don't know why, but for some reason, like, DVDs will come out in America, and then it'll be probably about 5 or 6 weeks before it comes out in the UK. So for what I remember, this DVD did not come out in the UK till January 2006. So I didn't get to see the documentary until very early 2006. And I wish it would have came out at the same time in America, because I would have got it for Christmas for 2005, but whatever. So when I finally got this DVD, I was so excited for... Oh, sorry, a little burp there. So excited to see it. I mean, really, really great stuff. Documentaries for me, documentary's not amazing. I mean, I think there's definitely been better WWE documentaries out there, but I think they did a great job with this. It was Bret talking about his career. You got a few good talking heads in there. You could tell Bret was pretty much hands-on for this. Bret had the stuff in the DVD he wanted to talk about. I mean, we have quite a good... Well, we talk about Bret's early life, growing up in the Hart family and all that. With Stu Hart as his dad, having all these wrestling brothers, owning the Stampede territory and all that. Then we get to Bret talking about his amateur wrestling career and all that. And then how he got into early professional wrestling in the late 70s. And we get a good 25 minutes, maybe half an hour of talking about Stampede wrestling. And there's no full matches on here though. There's not even, by the way, but there's a lot of footage on there. I mean, some of the best stuff on this, watching Bret Hart and the Dynamite Kid do this stuff, because pretty sure at this point I'd never really seen it. And they show stuff of Bret teaming with his brother Keith and stuff like that, wrestling people like Leo Burke and Dr. David Schultz and that, Bad News Allen and that sort of stuff. I mean, that's one of the things I would love to see, some of these Stampede Wrestling matches in full, but I don't think they're out there because I don't think they were recorded. Because at the time, in that era, the psychology was to only show bits on television to entice people to go to the arenas to watch the full matches. But I swear to God, I would so love to see some of those full Bret and Dynamite matches. Because obviously I've read Bret's book and all that, and the way he describes those matches, I'll be so excited if I could ever actually see it. Then obviously we talk about Vince buying out Stampede Wrestling in '84, bringing in the Bulldogs, Bret and Neidhart, and obviously Bret's early struggles in the WWF. I mean, Bret's one of those guys that really did start from the bottom, because for nearly a year he was pretty much a jobber. He'd pretty much be opening match guy. Obviously on the poster he was always +1 of the match, that sort of thing. He might sometimes go to 20-minute draws with people like Rene Goulet and people like that, but he very rarely won. It was just pretty much Bret Hart, generic wrestler, boots, tights, all that sort of thing. And then they tell an awesome story about how Bret nearly got saddled with a gimmick. Bret Hart nearly became Cowboy Bret Hart in 1985. And at the time, Bret was even kind of excited for this one. But that's until the car ride where Jim Neidhart was just mocking him and laughing at him relentlessly for becoming if he was going to become Cowboy Bret Hart, to the point where Bret told George Scott the Booker he didn't want to do it. Then they were like, alright, we'll think of the name. Then he came up with the idea of, well, we've got Jim Neidhart, my brother-in-law, who was managed by Jimmy Hart, no relation. We've all got Hart in our last names. Why don't you turn me heel, put me with Jim, let Jimmy Hart manage us, and we become the Hart Foundation, become a tag team. Then initially, they said they didn't want to do it, they'd think of something else, and then Bret goes back to a few months of just doing jobs, until the point he finally gets mad and decided he was going to quit the WWF, go to Japan or something, go somewhere else and maybe come back in a couple of years. Then, by coincidence, it seems like when Bret was going to quit, that's when they decided to do it. They put the Hart Foundation together. So we get to see some nice Hart Foundation footage, which is cool. Always love the Hart Foundation stuff. Great stuff. We get to see him talk about his matches with the Bulldogs, which for 1985, 1986 standards, those matches were tremendous. Then obviously this goes through the 80s into the early 90s into Bret becoming a single star, winning the Intercontinental title from Mr. Perfect, with matches with Roddy Piper, WrestleMania 8, albeit a lot of times given to the SummerSlam match with Davey Boy, which I've talked about relentlessly on these videos, so we don't need to go into that one again. Then of course that leads into Bret becoming the World Wrestling Federation champion in 1992 over Ric Flair. Then the whole WrestleMania 9 situation is discussed, which, not going to lie, I think Bret held on to bitterness for that Hogan situation for all these years. I mean, to be honest, he still goes on about it, and it's like, you know what, Bret, just let that one go, you know. It's not like Hogan not putting Bret Hart over ruined his career or anything. So that's the one I think this day Bret still complains about that. It's just like, it was 26 years ago, come on, let it go now. And that ties into nicely talking about the whole feud of Owen and all that, which I think Bret loved that feud of Owen because he loved Owen so much, and he loved being the one to really elevate Owen to that next level. And then that kind of goes into 1996 with the whole thing with Shawn. And to be fair, I think Bret does hold back. I mean, at the time, Bret still hated Shawn Michaels and all that. So I think like Bret does a good job of trying to be respectful for Shawn Michaels, but holding back his feelings of hatred towards him. He kind of like just doesn't go into too much detail about how much he didn't like Shawn and all that. And that led to the time off coming back to face Steve Austin. That's in great detail. That's awesome. And then probably the best accomplishment of the DVD, I think they had a particular compromise in Montreal. They talk about it, but they don't go into too much detail. And I think the biggest thing, Bret did not want this to be the selling point of the DVD thing, because I think in a lot of ways the Montreal Screwjob is always going to define Bret Hart. I mean, it will, won't it? I mean, when you think of Bret Hart, to a lot of people, that's the thing he's going to be most remembered for, the Montreal Screwjob. But I think Bret didn't really want that. I think Bret's point was there was so much more to his career than that night. I mean, there were so many positive moments. Why dwell on the negatives? So both Brett and Vince tell a side of the story, but I think they do it in an acceptable manner. Then obviously that goes into Brett's WCW run, which of course not a happy time, but they don't really go into too much detail about that because I guess Brett didn't want to dwell on that, and obviously their own tragedy. They had to address that as well. That was always a tough one. They had to address that as well. I mean, they talk about it, but they don't talk about it in too much detail, so they do gloss over it. And I think that's another one. Brett didn't want this to be a selling point of the DVD either. I mean, he didn't really. And then obviously this goes at the end of his career, getting injured by Goldberg and all that, and that obviously that led to the stroke and all that, which he talks about, which is pretty sad stuff. And then obviously that takes us into where they were at the time, 2005. Brett, now a legend, retired for all these years, and then we have a nice video at the end, a video tribute of Brett's career, great stuff. And then the matches. Brett personally handpicked a lot of the matches on this DVD. Some I already had on VHS, but like I say, at the time, I was really happy to have them on a DVD where I could watch them in much better quality and then just do it on the click of a remote rather than trawling through these VHSs trying to rewind back to the footage and all that sort of stuff. So the match you expected on here: Mr. Perfect at SummerSlam 91, Bulldog at SummerSlam 92, Owen at WrestleMania 10. No, the SummerSlam match isn't on there. Austin at WrestleMania 13, that sort of thing. But there's some really matches that were rare at the time. So we have a Half Foundation British Bulldogs matches from 1985. I believe that was in Madison Square Garden. A hell of a gem from 1986, also in the Garden. Half Foundation versus the Killer Bees. I mean, this was early. This was back when the Half Foundation were wearing blue and not pink. That was a great match, actually. One at the time I was so excited to see was Bret Hart versus Ricky Steamboat from Boston Gardens in 1986. Now, this would have been an amazing match back in 91, 92, 93. But considering 86, Bret Hart wasn't quite there as a singles wrestler yet, it was a great match nonetheless. Of course it would be. It's Ricky fucking Steamboat from the 1980s. Then we've got a really great match of Ted DiBiase in 1989, which looks to be a dark match from a television taping because there's no commentary on it. Then we got a Rockers match of Saturday Night's Main Event. That was on there. Really cool match. The Bret Hart versus Owen match from the WWF Action Zone show. A match that I think a lot of people didn't know existed. I mean, I must have watched this match back in 94 when it happened. But in 2005, I had no memories of this match happening. But I was an avid WWF fan at the time, so I had to have seen this match when it happened in 94. But obviously I'd never seen it again until 2005, and that was awesome. And then we got the last match on the show DVD was the Owen Hart tribute match with Chris Benoit and Nitro. So for me, as a big fan of Bret Hart, this DVD is always going to have a special place in my heart. And that's it, guys, and thanks for watching. This is a fairly long video today, so this is actually a pretty cool one, actually. This is one I'm interested to see what people think about it, what DVDs are on your list and that sort of thing. So tomorrow, guys, I've got another video planned for tomorrow, and that's Reboot and Survivor Series 2005. I'm just going to put the card in order and decide the winners and all that. I know what the card is. I just need to structure it as such, and I'll do that tomorrow. Obviously, as always, we're going to take over War Games and Survivor Series 2019 reviews coming up. And then in December, we've got matches of the year to look forward to. So I'm going to go, obviously, New Japan, NXT and WWE main roster. I've decided I will not do AEW this year because they've only really been running regularly for 3 months. And then they only had they've only really had a handful of shows this year. So I'll hold off on doing AEW matches this year, and I'll probably just wait till 2020 to do a list on them. And anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Until next time, peace.